Hey guys, Monke AU here with another video, and today we're going to be looking at my top 10 UFC fights that must happen in 2025. Now, these are my fights that I really want to see happen in the UFC. I'd give an arm and a leg to see them. Some of these fights, if they happen, they can confirm people as GOAT status. Others are going to be generational that we're going to watch over and over and over. But yeah, let's get straight into it. The first one, obviously, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Now, honestly, I think Pereira is going to win by a late KO in the later rounds. I'm predicting maybe even, I think, a round 5 KO, honestly. And here's my logic. Ankalaev, on paper, is a Dagestani wrestler, right? But the thing is actually, he really isn't. And if anything, he's just a good wrestler with better striking, right? And the thing is he's got a good couple wins under his belt. But recently, his performance against Johnny Walker was good, but we have to remember how Johnny Walker has fared since, which is not good. So, I mean, if you're trying to argue this guy's got KO power of Johnny Walker knockout, I'd say you got to think twice about that. Also, we have to remember that his last fight against Rakic, say what you want, even though Rakic wasn't engaging with him, Ankalaev really didn't do much at all, like whatsoever. So, I'm not necessarily fearing the striking from Ankalaev. Now, there's the argument that Ankalaev is southpaw and this, like, Israel Adesanya against Pereira is going to be very effective. Again, I don't know the specifics, but if we're going to base this purely off the skill sets that we do know, Pereira at light heavyweight has a really good chin. Like, okay, say what you want, he got dropped against Khalil, but knowing the kind of power that Khalil carries and the fact that Khalil's Muay Thai stance is actually the perfect counter for Pereira's kickboxing, I think if Pereira's toughest striking challenge, he could beat and bounce back and recover into the flow state in the later rounds, I don't think Ankalaev is going to face that much of a problem. Now, the wrestling is the real issue in this fight, and personally, I don't think Ankalaev is that good of a wrestler. Hot take, I think he's good, but all Pereira has to do is slug it out for a couple minutes, work his way back up to the feet, and then just win a decision the same way he did against Blachowicz. Or, here's the other thing. This is obvious, but every single round, they get broken up, they're going to be sent back, and they're going to restart on the feet. Now, this means that Pereira is going to have 5 chances to begin standing on the feet, find an opening, and eventually knock this guy out. So, I just think I think Ankalaev is going to be a slight favorite, but I think Pereira is pretty easy money in this fight. I'm really confident, and I really hope he does get this done. Also, put it this way, if Ankalaev were to take Pereira down, does he get ground and pound TKO knockouts? Not really. Is he a submission threat? Not really. Like, this guy isn't a Kazma where he's going to pick you up and then sub you. It's more like he's going to wrestle you than try to hit you, but come on, this is Pereira we're talking about. Also, the ramifications is that if Pereira wins this fight, which I think he will, he's going straight up to heavyweight. And if he goes up to heavyweight, he's cemented himself as one of the greatest fighters already, regardless of whether he wins that fight. Still, I'm really, really excited for 313. I'm so glad they actually made this fight pretty early, and I'm glad we're seeing Pereira sooner rather than later. So yeah, I'm really excited for this fight. I'm excited for Pereira to prove all the doubters wrong. Next fight, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Obviously, this is a really good fight. This is an important fight, obviously, because when you have Jon Jones, the GOAT, versus Tom Aspinall, who, in my opinion, is the actual heavyweight GOAT, already, I think he's the greatest heavyweight to exist ever. And you know, he arguably doesn't have that long of a career. I think Aspinall is going to win this fight, and I say this because Jon Jones' wrestling is probably going to be better than Aspinall's. But again, is he a guy notorious for getting the ground and pound knockouts? Not necessarily. I think that Tom is going to be good enough. Also, we have to remember, whenever Jones does take down Aspinall, Aspinall has a great ground game, and who's to say he doesn't throw up a triangle or hit an armbar? Who's to say this doesn't happen? Or simply just get up with the amount of strength he has. Jon Jones looks big, but Aspinall is going to mog him, and he does mog him. I mean, he's got an extra inch of height on him. I think he's got more muscle. I just think he's got the skills to knock Jon Jones out. And the thing is Jones, it took him 3 rounds to knock out Stipe. I think Aspinall would have done that in 1 round, frankly, because I think Aspinall just has freakish power. He has freakish power. Jon Jones, I don't know if he has that. He's more of a technical guy. I don't think his powers necessarily increased when it came up to heavyweight. I mean, who are we kidding? He's fought twice at heavyweight. First against Garn, which was a sub, and then against Miocic, which was a spinning back kick. I mean, that doesn't translate to how hard you punch, but rather how hard you kick, and that's a totally different game. That being said, I think Tom Aspinall would win this fight by KO. And I'm going to say, honestly, pretty early. I think maybe a round 3 KO. That's my prediction, round 3 KO. Now, does this fight actually happen? Totally different story. Honestly, now I'm kind of leaning towards no, because even though Dana White said this fight was going to happen, John Jones he's acting the same way he did when he ducked Ngannou, the exact same way, saying, I demand this amount of money. The UFC says they'll do it, and then there's just been radio silence since. Because of that, I honestly don't think this fight happens, but if it does, I think Aspinall wins. Next fight, Alex Pereira versus the heavyweight champion. Like I said, I think Pereira, after he beats Ankalaev, honestly, there's no one left for him at light heavyweight. So, in my opinion, he should go up to heavyweight. And the thing is in both situations, I think Aspinall and Jones immediately shoot a takedown and go for the sub. Now, here's my reasoning. Both Aspinall and Jones have way better wrestling than Ankalaev. Also, they're going to have a 50 pounds difference between Ankalaev and them. Because of that, I think they go out and make easy work of Pereira. It's the unfortunate truth. I mean, honestly, I think it's really, really unlikely that Pereira just manages to knock either of them out, because I think these guys are smart enough to take him down instantly. Now, here's the thing. If he pulls it off, if Pereira wins, then honestly, there's an argument that he's the GOAT. Honestly, I think he is instantly put into the top 3 fighters of all time, because being a triple weight class champion is just insane. And let's say he knocks out Jones, he's just knocked out the GOAT. And let's say he knocks out Aspinall, he's knocked out the heavyweight GOAT. These are tricky opponents. So if he can pull it off, it'll be generational. Honestly, I think we're going to see either one of these fights in November, New York, Madison Square Garden. And I'm really excited, but still, unless Pereira gets a fluke knockout, not a fluke, but a crazy knockout, I think either of these guys are going to sub him. Next fight, DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev. Honestly, I wanted to pick DDP, but Chimaev is just on a different level at the moment, and it's really weird. I think, honestly, if this fight happens, and let's say it happens in October, Abu Dhabi, my pick is going to be based heavily on how Khamzat looks and acts the week of the fight, right? Because if looks sickly, or if there's been any rumors of him actually getting sick, I'm probably going to pick Duplessis at this point. Because the thing is when he fought against Usman, Usman survived, but it was not good. And I think Dricus could survive if he runs into a sick Chimaev, But if Chimaev is in tip-top shape, I think he goes out and probably steamroll Duplessis. But who knows? Maybe DDP has got that freakish strength. I don't necessarily think so. I think he's strong, but Khamzat is he's different. And at this point, he doesn't even need to pick you up and walk you over. He just needs to trip you, get on your back, and then sub you. That being said, obviously, the longer the fight goes on, the more this favors DDP. But I don't know. I mean, maybe people are controversial take. Maybe people are overhyping Chimaev, because when we saw the Robert Whittaker tap, it was so quick because he broke his jaw that we all subconsciously think that Chimaev is this unreal power. But maybe because it was such a quick tap, we think that way. And in reality, who knows? Maybe if Whittaker's jaw was fine, it wasn't under the chin, it was on the chin. Who's to say he wouldn't have pushed it off and then it could have gone an extra couple rounds? Who knows? That being said, I'm probably going to go with Khamzat by sub. But again, if he's sickly, I might pick DDP. I probably would pick DDP in that scenario. Next fight, Islam Makhachev versus the welterweight champion. Here's the thing. I think if Islam fights Bilal, honestly, I think Bilal probably wins the decision, but I do see a world. This is the weird thing. I think Islam would probably go out there and wrestle Shavkat to a decision. But if he fights Bilal, I've got a feeling Bilal's wrestling would be good enough to counter Islam's, right? But here's the thing. I've got a feeling that if Islam were to fight Bilal, his method of victory would be knockout. Because I think with the head kick or with some crisp striking, he could definitely get him. But Bilal's really on a different level, man. I mean, my pick for this fight is going to change heavily depending on the outcome of Shavkat Bilal. But at the moment, I don't know. I think it really depends on who he fights. Does this fight actually happen? honestly, I think this fight does happen this year. Personally, I think Bilal's going to beat Shavkat. And then from there, I honestly think Islam's going to fight Bilal anyway. Because, say what you want. Islam's been making it pretty clear that he's ready for welterweight. He wants the second belt. And honestly, at this point, you can't deny him considering he's defended 4 times. He's beat some really good guys like Dubronx, Poirier, Volkanovski. Obviously, I wish he fought Arman so then we can really know whether he's truly cleared out the division. But since there's so much controversy behind the Arman pullout, I don't know. I think it would take so long for him to get that fight back. So that being said, if it's Bilal, I'd favor Bilal to win, but not by a huge amount. But if it's Shavkat, I'd favor Islam to win that pretty handily, I'd say. Next fight, Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway 2. Now, this fight is going to be good if they book it. And honestly, they need to book this for the BMF because, maybe you could say, oh, Oliveira isn't BMF worthy. But yeah, you know what? On paper, neither is Max Holloway because Max is a nice guy, but he's a killer and so is Oliveira. Oliveira is a cool, nice guy, but man, does he have some crazy knockouts. I mean, he's got the most subs in UFC history, most performance bonuses in UFC history. It's crazy. That being said, I think Oliveira would eventually sub Max Holloway, and I say this because Holloway, it really comes down to the wrestling defense. I mean, he was picked up pretty easily by Topuria and just flat out slammed on the ground, and obviously he got back up, which is, that's good, but Oliveira, he picked up Michael Chandler and dunked him in round 1. And I think it's going to be way harder to get Chandler down than it would to be Holloway. That being said, I think Holloway might be able to win out a decision if his wrestling defense is good enough. But honestly, the second it goes to the ground, Oliveira, his chance of winning goes up just exponentially. So because of that, I'm going to have to go with Oliveira by sub. But honestly, I want this fight, because this is a cool, good fight. I think, honestly, the time is now to book this fight, considering that they're both finally at lightweight. They're both on, well, not Holloway. He lost to Topuria. But, you can't judge Max for being on a one-loss-lose streak, considering he fought Topuria, who already, in my opinion, is a featherweight GOAT, right? You can't blame him. But he did beat Gaethje. He deserves the top 3 spot in lightweight. And why not make this fight? This is a great fight, and I'd be really excited to see it. And who knows, this might actually happen at this rate. Alternative fight, or one I want to see later on in the year, is Max Holloway vs. Dustin Poirier 3. And this will be the trilogy. This will be Poirier's retirement fight. And frankly, I think Holloway is probably going to get this win back. But here's the thing. This is going to be tricky because I think Poirier, the first time I watched him fight Islam, for some reason I thought he looked really slow. But then the more and more I've rewatched the fight, I realized that, no, he's actually really quick with it. Still, that being said, Poirier's keys to success in that fight were the wrestling defense, which was exceptional. It was the best ever, but you don't have to worry about that when you're fighting Holloway. And the last time Poirier fought a striker was Benoit, and as we know, Benoit sometimes he's got bad fight IQ, and he makes bad decisions like rushing in. Holloway is strategic, and in the Topuria fight, rewatch it, he was in, out, taking insane shots, doing really well, utilizing range. I think that was really impressive stuff from Holloway. And also, this is going to be a fully prepared lightweight Holloway as compared to like 2 weeks notice Holloway, muffin top. So because of that, I think Holloway is going to win. But this will be a great fight. I guess they would have to put the BMF on the line, but I don't know. I'd rather they do the Holloway Oliveira fight, and then they do Holloway Poirier, because that's going to be a good fight regardless. Next fight, Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje, now booked for UFC 313, 5 rounds. That's going to be crazy. Now, this is my crystal ball, dark horse pick of the evening. I think Hooker is going to sub Gaethje, and here's how I see it going down. Back in the day, Hooker was known as the Hangman. I mean, he's still known as the Hangman, but the reason why is because he used to sub people. Like, look back at his record. He's got some crazy subs. That being said, I think, honestly, these guys are probably going to drop each other a couple times, but this is the thing. The first time that if Hooker drops Gaethje, I think instead of going for the ground and pound, rewatch the Gamrot fight, you'll see what I mean. He's going to go straight for a Darce choke, like instantly. Or not a Darce choke, but he's going to go straight for the choke, because the second Gaethje hits the floor, I think it's going to be hard to ground and pound TKO him because he's so resilient and he's just a freak of nature. but get him in a sub, that's going to be tricky. I mean, Gaethje doesn't really have that great of submission defense, frankly. So I think Hooker could get it done. And by submission, that's a controversial pick, but I've just got a feeling that he could pull it off. Realistically, I think this is pretty. This is a prediction where it's possible on paper, but do I actually think it happens? No, but I think it will happen, right? But if you were to look beside that, realistically, I think Gaethje is probably going to get the knockout in this fight, because say what you want about Hooker, he got dropped way too easily against Gamrot, and he took some flush shots, but if Gamrot's doing that to you, Gaethje is going to make you pay dearly. So I don't know, but still, this is going to be a good fight. I think this is going to be a late round finish regardless. I don't think this goes the distance. I'm really excited for this fight though. This is making UFC 313 looking really good. Maybe even my favorite pay-per-view of the year, and it hasn't even really started. I mean, we're just barely we're not even in February, but we're really close to it, and already I think this 313 pay-per-view is going to be my favorite of the year. I'm really excited for this fight. Next fight, Merab Dvalishvili versus Alexandre Pantoja. Here's the thing. I think Merab is going to win this fight by decision. And the logic is that Pantoja, he's got really good hands, and he's gritty, and he's going to bite down on the mouthpiece like a dog, and he might put Merab in trouble every now and then, honestly, because I see this situation where if Pantoja just walks him down from across the octagon and just swings and doesn't care, he could knock out Merab, because Merab, he hasn't really dealt with anyone like Pantoja before, because Pantoja's got such solid fundamental wrestling that, I mean, here's the thing, we said the exact same thing about Umar, right? And look how that turned out, but his big issue was cardio. Pantoja has gone through a lot of 5-round wars, in his time. He fought Royval, that went to the distance. He fought Moreno, that went to the distance. He fought Urseg, that went to the distance. And that was a crazy back and forth fight. I think the longer the fight goes on, the more likely Merab is to win, which is probably why I'd favor him to win this fight. But I think Pantoja's got a pretty good chance of an early knockout. And if he does, that's historic. That'll be a historic win. And frankly, I think this morning they booked Kai France versus Pantoja for 314. I think we could see this fight maybe in the third quarter of the year. I think maybe an August pay-per-view, which would be really exciting. Maybe they do this one in Brazil. Honestly, they could do this one in Brazil, which would be badass if they book it. And here's the thing, Merab, really, there's no one left for him in bantamweight other than the Petian rematch, which I don't want to have foregone conclusions, but let's be honest, that's going to be a little tricky to pick Jan in that fight, considering how Merab made him look the first time around. And Pantoja, he's in a bit of a similar situation, if they had to bring in Kaya Sakura, for heaven's sake, and now he's fighting Kai France, who he knocked out Usyk, but he's a bit of a one-trick pony, right? He's a knockout guy, not necessarily a wrestling guy. Like, honestly, I think Pantoja's going to sub Kai France, not easily, but, pretty handily within the first couple rounds. And because of that, I think this is the fight to make. These guys are the only real competition these guys have left, And still, this is a champ fight. This is actually a deserving champ fight. Like, we're not just pushing anyone up for no reason, because these guys have both cleared out the divisions. It's going to be really exciting. And frankly, I'm curious to see what others would say about this fight. Like, this is 50-50 in my opinion. But yeah, another fight I want to see made is Sean O'Malley versus Petian 2. Honestly, I'd say book this one right now for the number one contender spot at bantamweight, because, I mean, you can give Petian the title shot. He's on a 2-fight win streak, but, at the same time, Figgy was an impressive win. Song Yadong's an impressive win. But if he can beat O'Malley in a 5-rounder, there's no denying him. Similarly, if O'Malley goes out there and makes easy work of Petian, then he actually does deserve the title shot. This is a clear number one contenders fight for bantamweight, and the first one was so close. I mean, I've wrote it down, but I'd favor Jan by decision. But don't be surprised if O'Malley actually comes back. I mean, O'Malley's good. It's just that knowing what we know about Merab now, and the fact that O'Malley won the 5th against Merab, which is just crazy in hindsight. I think he could put up a good fight. That being said, Jan was doing incredible judo trips on Figueiredo. We had prime Jan come back. If he can bring that energy against O'Malley, I don't know. I'd favor Jan to win by decision, but I don't think either of these guys are getting knocked out. I don't think anyone's getting submitted either. So I'm going to say this goes the distance, and this should be a good fight considering how good the first one was. That's just about does it. Those were my top 10 UFC fights I want to see made in 2025. A couple of them have already been booked, like Pereira, Ankalaev, and Hooker Gaethje, but I want to see all of these fights eventually. These are sick fights. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what fights you really want to see. Like, what's your number one fight you want to see this year? Leave a comment down below saying whether or not you agree with my predictions, whether or not you think they're good, they're bad. And yeah, check out my other videos. I'm going to be making more in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video.